about detox. Let's look at light first. I think that's important. And then air and water, how you
Yeah.
detox from malillumination, how important that is, sunlight, the different frequencies in terms of our detox protocol with our mitochondria. So maybe just expand on those different areas and let's start with light.
I love this because no one's ever started with light, and I get so excited because right next to me is a PMF mat, which is electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
Love, love, love that thing. It's been my game changer with my deep sleep, with my vibrancy, with my healing. Like, it is a powerhouse. PMF, for any of you who don't know, is pulsed electromagnetic therapy. NASA has used this technology. I mean, it is well studied. Some of the big pearls about this are it can be really good for calming the nervous system. So like when patients or when myself have had a mold exposure, I'll use a low level, like a Schumann frequency, which is like walking barefoot on the beach, kind of getting that grounding on the earth. You can actually get that from the mat. So like, for example, when I used to get a mold exposure, I'd have wake up in the night and have some tachycardia, like 120 out of sleep. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel well because my heart's beating so fast. Or my legs would ache. And I think that was just due to the vascular effects of mold. And I would get on that mat at a Schumann frequency, and in 20 minutes, I'd feel back to 100%. So love PEMF. I love red light therapy of any type. I use it on my face for my skin. I use it on my brain. I have a Violite. There's many other devices out there that actually do mitochondrial enhancement. I have an alpha level wave, and I love using that before I speak or before I write or whatever. And so that red light to the brain, red light to the face can increase collagen. So I'm a huge fan of, I have a wand even right here behind me. Just randomly, this is a wand that does red light. So
Oh,
you can
wow.
see it turns red on when you put it up against your face. And I have a device that, oh, here we go. I was going to say, see that red light there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Brilliant.
that's on the face, and then I can actually put a mask on the face. I love light therapy. And when I get up in the morning, what I've been doing is experimenting with going off of caffeine. I only drink about a cup a day, so I'm not dependent on it.
Mm.
But what we want to do is bring down those adenosine levels, because caffeine blocks adenosine. And what happens is, as soon as we stop caffeine, that fatigue that was being suppressed by the caffeine molecule, the adenosine is still there. And as soon as we stop using the caffeine, when the half-life's up, all of a sudden the adenosine level's still back there and we get tired, we need a nap, we get sleepy. So I've been experimenting with basically sunlight, a lamp that's sunlight spectrum when I first get up in the morning, because that will actually lower adenosine naturally without using caffeine. So what I
Wow.
do is I get up in a half hour earlier than I normally do. I put that sunlight light there. I sit in my chair for 30 minutes, no coffee. And I'm starting to feel really, really good without coffee. And I love my
Wow.
coffee. So that's a fun thing, because it's that sunlight in your eyes, stimulates the retina and actually lowers adenosine. And it's kind of a hack, because caffeine doesn't lower adenosine, it just blocks adenosine. So all that
Mm.
adenosine buildup, and our adenosine builds up from our morning, it's low. It's the opposite of melatonin. And then as we go down to get ready to sleep, it rises and it tells us we're tired and we need to sleep. So if we block it with caffeine, it's still there. It's underneath. And then the caffeine goes away and all of a sudden we're really, really tired. So I've
Yeah.
been playing with this, bringing down adenosine
Yeah,
with light.
you must let me know how it goes. And what about infrared sauna? Are you an infrared sauna fan? Do you use the incandescent bulb? Or what type of saunas do you use?
Yeah, so right next to me here, I have a red light bulb also I can use for like a low back or an arm or a joint. I love, and that's an infrared bulb. I love infrared sauna. It's probably the cornerstone of detoxing from mold, because you get this penetration deep into the tissues. It increases enzymatic detoxification processes. It helps your liver. And as we know, we can breathe out toxins, we can sweat out toxins, we can pee or stool. All those ways are the ways that we get rid of toxins. And one of the most powerful ways, especially for PCBs, phthalates, parabens, and mold toxins, is sweating in a sauna. So part of my protocol for almost any patient getting well is start with, and I usually say, because these are really sensitive patients, I say turn up your sauna to 130 degrees. 130 to 135 is the ideal temp for detox. The higher doses are like, say, 145, 150 might be better for sweating or weight loss, but for detox, 130 to 135 is optimal. And what I'll do is I'll have them set it to 135 and get in when it hits 100, and then start with 5 minutes. And then the next time 7 or 8 minutes, and the next time 10 or 12. And they just gently ramp that up, because then they stay longer and it gets closer to 130. And then when they hit 130, 135, as they work up to that dose, they can stay in there 30 to 45 minutes, 5 times a week, or as much as they tolerate.
Brilliant. We had Dr. Terry Walls on the show, and your show, your podcast, which we'll put links to, and on my podcast. She speaks a lot about infrared sauna. I'd love to hear what you take pre-infrared sauna. Do you take any binders from zeolite or
Mhm.
bentonite clay, or what do you do? Phospholipids. There's a lot of research now on
Yeah.
phosphatidylcholine and what it does from a detox point of view. What are your sort of precursors to infrared sauna?
So the very basics would be some sort of glutathione or precursors. So just plain old liposomal glutathione, oral, IV, transdermal, inhaled, any source. But you don't, if you take plain old capsule glutathione that's not acetylated or liposomal, it is disrupted in your stomach and you won't really get the benefit. The stomach acid impairs absorption. So you need to have a liposomal under your tongue or IV or inhaled or S-acetylglutathione, some form that's able to bypass that. Phosphatidylcholine is like oil change in our car. It's our lipids that make up our brain and our body, and every single cell has the phospholipid bilayer, which is how our cells communicate. And if that is sticky from trans fats from our diet, maybe fast food or French fries or some of these things that aren't healthy, or from mold or toxic exposures, changing that oil in our car or in our brain can happen with phosphatidylcholine. And I love PC. I take it every day. Sometimes PC, because you're changing lipids, you're also throwing out a lot of toxins. So just like the sauna for super sensitive patients, you need to go slow. And if your lipid bilayer and your permeability of your gut is massively disrupted, you actually want to wait to do PC until you do a little healing on the gut, because it'll just cause so much. It actually causes translocation of lipopolysaccharide and some of the bacterial components that cause inflammation in our gut. So again, the timing of PC is important, because if you're really sick, really toxic, your gut is destroyed, PC is probably going to take those toxic metabolites and cause them to cross over into the bloodstream more quickly. We don't want that. So start by healing your gut. 2 to 3 months later, you can add PC. Prior to sauna, I mentioned glutathione. Other things, if you can't tolerate glutathione, are precursors: N-acetylcysteine, R-lipoic acid, vitamin C. Glycine is the rate limiting factor for making glutathione, and it's also good for healing from glyphosate. It's the thing that's depleted with glyphosate toxicity. Yeah. And then glutamine. And those are kind of core things that if you can't do, when I was really, really sick, I couldn't tolerate glutathione. So I did vitamin C and NAC and glycine. So, and that worked. So you can do precursors. Some people will do niacin, which is kind of a flush inducer. Yeah. It's a B3, and that flushing can make you sweat more. So if you really want to get a sweat on, you can take a little bit of niacin, the flush version. And then the binders are key, because you're basically mobilizing toxins. And when someone talks about either going too fast, having a Herxheimer reaction, getting sick from treatment, or even if they're detoxing too quickly, I always say that's a sign. We have 2 parts of detox. We have mobilization and we have excretion. Mobilization is easy. We take glutathione, we sauna, we exercise, we do all these things. That's easy. It's taking the toxins from our tissues where they're stored in the fat and getting them mobilized into the blood so our liver, our kidneys, our skin, our lungs can detoxify and get them out of our body. But the second part is actually most important, and that's excretion. So you have mobilization, you have excretion. Excretion's harder because this involves lymphatics. It involves your bowels and bowel movements. It involves urination and your kidneys, and it involves your skin and your sweating ability. And the lymphatics are huge, and people forget about lymphatics. And all of those pieces are actually really important, because when someone has a Herxheimer or a detox reaction, it means they're mobilizing faster than they can excrete. Yeah. So all you need to do is shift the equation, improve excretion. But again, that can be hard, because you need to do lymphatic drainage, hydrotherapy, cold water therapy, getting the lymphatic stimulated, dry brushing, lymphatic drainage remedies, homeopathics. All of the naturopaths have taught us some of these kinds of things because they know about this. They do it. PMF, I think, would help lymphatic drainage but it's also more subtle, because it's not just taking a pill. You have to, so if you're having trouble with too much sauna, you want to work on the excretion. And back to the binders, what I do is usually recommend after your sauna, take a binder: clay, charcoal, zeolite, glycomannan, chlorella. There's a bunch of them. You can combine them. But I'm a huge fan of glutathione precursors, making sure you're excreting, and then also doing binders after sauna.
So you do the binders after, and then you do the assisted help with mobilizing the toxicity in the different areas. Okay, so that's very, very interesting. What about looking at things like zeolite? Do you look at that, or specific binders that are a little bit softer? Do you go into a lot of that with regard to your practice?
I do, because I have a real gestalt, not only clinically experienced, kind of like you, I've been doing this 20 years, but also just there's a binder compendium where some of the research has been put together about which metabolites, like for example, Catoma globosum is best bound by charcoal. And same with any trichosilane, which is the really toxic black metabolites from Stachybotrys and Gatomium. Now, granted, other binders work, but charcoal is a game changer for those. If you're looking at something like gliotoxin, which can be from Candida, but also can be from Aspergillus, Sometimes things like chlorella or glycomannans or Saccharomyces boulardii, those are actually potentially better binders than charcoal, and clay works too. So I definitely do. And if someone has just mold exposure in general and they have a little bit of everything, I'll usually combine clay, charcoal, and zeolite. And the reason for that is clay and charcoal work. They're very gentle. Zeolite's really good for metals, and it has a little bit more affinity for some of the other toxins. And that combination is pretty gentle and works really, really well.
Is that after sauna? And if someone's not sauning, when do they take those binders?
Oh, great question. So the standard, if you're not sauning, glutathione, empty stomach, 30 minutes before food or supplements, and just because you're getting it liposomally, but you should be able to, after 30 minutes, take whatever else you want. Binders want to be 1 hour either before a meal or before supplements, or 2 hours after. My personal routine is I'll get up early, go to my sunlight light, and the very first thing I do is walk out to the kitchen and I'm half asleep, and I take my binders with a large glass of water with lemon. Lemon also alkalinizes the system and helps. And then by the time if I have my coffee or don't have my coffee and have my light, an hour or so later after I've done my meditation, then I take my supplements, have breakfast. But I like that. Binders usually first thing in the morning, at bedtime if you don't take anything else, but you need an empty stomach with binders, because these are electrostatically charged particles, and their job is to grab onto those toxins almost like a magnet would be with lead filings across a table. And if you take them with food, they're going to bind to food and not be as effective. It won't hurt you, just won't be as effective.